Hello there, and welcome. So here we are on a Thursday, and I've had such a week in just 3 days. So I want to give you a little writing exercise to go with the passage I read for you from John Hodgman's wonderful collection, Vacation Land. The particular essay was called Nerve Food, and it's his experience of raccoons in rural Massachusetts. So I just love that passage, but I also wanted to design a writing assignment around it. I find that if I really admire what a writer has done, if I try to do something of a similar structure, it teaches me things about what I want to accomplish as a writer. So before I talk about the humor, which I will at the very end here, this is really not a writing assignment about humor. It's a writing assignment about god-awful situations. P.J. O'Rourke, I once read an essay by P.J. O'Rourke, who's a political writer, and he said in there that he was talking to a fellow journalist who was at a war site, and he could hear bombs going off in the background, and he could hear the excitement of the journalist who was in this very dangerous situation. Well, why? And the big thing was, he said, journalists love a god-awful situation. Well, truthfully, writers love god-awful situations because they're an opportunity to really dig in and try to reveal something important. So I want to make a recommendation that you write about something that happened to you that was god-awful. You can fictionalize it if you like, or like John Hodgman, you can make it genuine. It's up to you, of course, you're the writer. But what I want to suggest about the structure of this writing is I want you to think of the number 3. You're going to write of 3 moments, or 3 encounters, or 3 episodes of something that was god-awful. And the second thing you're going to do is tie yourself back to the arrow of time. In other words, you're going to start with the first incident, go to the second, and then the third. The reason why I say that, many young writers are like, what do you mean? Of course it's going to be in order. But as a writer, you're really in charge of time inside your work. And so if you really start looking at how writers explore experiences, they will often flip things around in order because they're trying to achieve a certain effect. Certainly Kurt Vonnegut did that in Slaughterhouse 5. So let's think of that as you're tied to the arrow of time. Even in this writing, you're going to go the first, the second, and then the third. And finally, you're going to allow yourself to be as vulgar or profane as you need to be. And for those of you who don't clearly remember or clearly recall the difference between vulgar and profane, vulgar has to do with tabooed words that concern the body. Anything that has to do with the body is a vulgar term. Profane is anything that's a forbidden or tabooed word that has to do with the divine. In other words, God and in the eternal realms. Those are profanities. So I find myself tending more to the vulgar, and certainly John Hodgman in his little experiences with the raccoons was talking about vulgar things and used a little bit, and I mean a very mild little bit of vulgar language. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose this writing can serve. There's a great movie, animated movie, if you haven't seen it, you absolutely should, called Spirited Away. It's a Japanese movie, but you can get it with American speakers. It's a cartoon. In Spirited Away, there's a moment that has to do with sort of ancient medical techniques, and they're not just limited to Asian medical techniques. Lots of medicinal practitioners of the early days use this. when somebody was sick and full of poisons, sometimes what the medicine man or woman, nurse, would give them would cause them to vomit, to purge out of themselves all the poisons that they had ingested. So this is what I think God awful can do for you. If you've had a rough experience, a difficult experience, a painful experience, writing about it can be like a purgative for the emotions and for the mind. If you write down this experience, you can sometimes experience a feeling of release and of relaxation, an ability to get a hold of what you're experiencing and to look at it and get some perspective on it. Now, I know this is a little frightening for people who are considering writing about something particularly emotionally traumatic. And I can understand that fear, and I understand the trap. Above all, you want to avoid the trap of getting caught in it and re-experiencing it in a way that reopens the hurt. But if you can let it go and get it out on the page, you'll have more control over it. You'll be able to say, this is what happened and this is my perspective on it. And as you write and think your way through it, you may come to have some power over it. You can fold it up and put it away. You can take it after you've written it down and destroy it. But the important part is you have an opportunity to purge yourself of things that were awful. And that opportunity is a great gift. Now, in John Hodgman's case, he's a humorous writer. And that essay, Nerve Food, that the raccoon bit was from, is very funny. In fact, the entire collection of Vacationland is very funny. I am not suggesting that you try to be funny. You might write something funny. It's possible. And there are all sorts of theories and ideas about humor that I've read and studied. But here's the thing. Humor is perhaps the most delicate of creatures. It's kind of like those deep sea creatures that when they get caught and pulled up to the surface, they fall apart. Because the nature of them means that if you try to examine them too closely, if you try to get them to the surface, they can't hold up. Comedians are funny because they're funny. And we can look at how they build their humor, both on the page and out loud, and say, this is funny, and this is funny, and maybe that's why, and maybe this is why. Part of it's surprise, part of it's recognition, part of it has to do with being genuine. All of those things are true. But I suggest that being funny is sort of like having a certain eye color. Studying it won't necessarily give you that eye color. So I'm not asking you to be funny. If it turns out funny, awesome, because it's very difficult to be funny on the page. It's even rarer to be funny on the page than it is to be funny aloud. And certainly if you get a few funny bits, you can refine them and make them work even better. That is certainly true. But the funny is not the point here. The awful is the point. That's it for today. I hope you have a glorious rest of the day. I'm certainly going to try to. And I hope you see me again, you gorgeous people.